Incredible revelation, a widow offers her land to a solitary slave for an unexpected miracle. The walls of Martha's farmhouse, once filled with laughter, echoed only with death's silence. As she surveyed her barren fields, memories twisted like the dying corn. She could hear her husband's voice mixed with the rustle of the wind, a bittersweet symphony that now seemed an impossible dream. Grief morphed into an oppressive weight resting on her chest, a constant reminder that life had thrust her into an unforgiving reality. She owed debt she could hardly comprehend, spiraling numbers that morphed into monsters threatening to consume all she had left. Then, she met Eli, his presence as solid as the earth he tended. A man forged from hardship, he bore the remnants of bonds broken, yet the quiet strength emanating from him whispered promises of hope. Observing him from her window, Martha felt an odd mixture of envy and admiration. While her life was a tangled web of failure, he stood in the richness of possibility, sowing seeds not just into the ground but into life itself. Yet, Martha wrestled with something far more sinister than her debts or her loneliness. It clawed at her from the inside, the question, could she be kind without honoring the ghosts of her past? The town's whispers danced around her, infectious and accusatory. Would extending her hand toward Eli ignite the flames of dissent? In Willow Creek, kindness was a double-edged sword, sharp enough to draw blood. As she wandered through the dying fields, accompanied by the fading autumn light, her heart raced with uncertainty. The decision loomed before her like a specter, asking whether she could risk everything for Eli's dream and perhaps her own salvation. Emotion curled inside her, a tempest fighting between loyalty to her late husband and a desire to cultivate something new and raw. What would her husband think of her choices now? Was there space in her heart for acceptance when she'd fought so hard against despair? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. That fateful afternoon, with shadows stretching like fingers across the ground, Martha found herself beside Eli as he tended to the small patch of earth he claimed as his own. It was humble, but it held the promise of renewal, green shoots emerging from the soil in defiance of winter's approach. Energized by his presence, Martha felt something shift inside her. "What if I offered you a portion of my land?" She blurted unexpectedly, her voice trembling with vulnerability. Fear fell over her like a heavy blanket. She saw the flash of surprise in his eyes, but it quickly morphed into something deeper: hope. Their breaths mingled, and for a moment, time stood still. The implications tugged at her. Would the town erupt with fury? Would they view her as a traitor to her husband's memory? The storm of backlash brewed in her mind, unrelenting as the crows that circling above the fields, ready to feast upon her mistakes. Martha stood at a crossroads, courage venomously battling against her fears. As she witnessed the flicker of determination in Eli's stance, she knew she couldn't retract her offer, not without devastating consequences. In standing up for Eli, she might just stand against the collective anger of a community that had become her prison. And yet, she yearned for change, for a spark of resilience to rise from the ashes of her despair. As their eyes locked, her heart raced. Just then, a shadow fell over them, a figure she recognized, one who could ignite the storm. Would she fortify her choice and face the wrath of her neighbors? Or would the walls of consequence draw closer, squeezing her anew? Her world hung suspended in that moment, the future uncertain, blind to the revelation that awaited them. Martha felt the weight of the world pressing down on her as she turned to face the shadow that loomed nearby. It was Thomas, her late husband's closest friend, and a trusted figure in the community. He stood there, solid as an oak, a scowl etched across his brow as he processed the scene before him. "Eli." His voice boomed like thunder rolling across the sky, interrupting the moment that had hung palpably between her and Eli. "What do you think you're doing here?" The accusation dripped from his words, heavy with history and the weight of unspoken loyalties. Martha's heart thudded in her chest. She could feel the air thin around her as her body instinctively recoiled. The warmth that had ignited within her moments ago encased her again in a box of anxiety. Could it truly be that her quest for redemption would spiral into a confrontation she was wholly unprepared for? The foundations of her emerging courage felt precarious, ready to crumble beneath Thomas' caustic glare. Eli straightened up, his face a placid mask, but his eyes flared with a quiet intensity. Martha knew that Eli had faced down storms before, he had survived them. She realized in that moment that perhaps it was her own fear that had held her captive thus far. Had she chosen to cower instead of confront? "I'm working on the land you cast aside, Thomas," Eli replied steadily, "and I can make something of it." His voice was steely, yet it contained a warmth that resonated with Martha. "I need this chance, and I believe Martha is offering it." The accusation flashed on Thomas's face, disbelief coupled with indignation. "This is a widow's moment of weakness you're exploiting, Eli. She doesn't owe you anything," he spat. As his words lashed out, a spark ignited in Martha, one that melted the trepidation she wore like armor. This was about much more than land, it was about the strength of her decisions and the reflection of her soul. Thomas had been a constant in her life, but even constants could distort her vision. "I owe my future to no one but myself," she said with surprising clarity, her voice firm. "And I want to invest in the growth of this land, Eli's growth, and perhaps my own." As she spoke, Martha felt a tether snap loose, the shadows of her past loosened their hold on her. Her heart raced, but this time it was with purpose. Thomas stared at her, bewildered, a tempest of confusion sweeping through. "You're risking your reputation, your entire standing in the community for this? For a man who once was bound?" His words boiled with indignation as the strength of tradition collided with the burgeoning flame of her resolve. "Isn't that what life is about?" Martha retorted, her passion igniting further. "Isn't it about choices that define us? If our futures are shaped by fear and the ghosts of the past, then what good are we? I cannot live in the shadow of what once was." Her heart thumped as she dared to glance at Eli, who now wore an expression of quiet admiration tempered with disbelief. In that moment, Martha recognized the potential for growth that lay not just in the soil but within herself. Her decision stood before her like new sprouts pressed against the frosty ground, vulnerable, yet determined, and full of promise. The tension in the air thickened as Thomas struggled for a response, the power dynamic of their lives shifting subtly. The voices of the past hungrily pressed in, yet for the first time, Martha felt a promise unfurl within her, a new beginning waiting for her acknowledgement. But before anything could resolve, a distant voice rang out, crystallizing the tension. "What is going on here?" The authoritative tone could only belong to Sheriff S. Waverly, a figure that demanded respect. The threat of escalating consequences pressed down on them all, signaling that Martha's moment of revelation would not go unchallenged. Could she hold on to her newfound determination, or would fear once again shackle her soul as the world began to press around them? As the sheriff's figure grew closer, Martha understood that every choice she made would reverberate beyond her own life. She needed to summon everything within her to navigate the storm about to descend. Martha felt the stirring of her resolve ripple through her, pushing against the cold grip of doubt that Sheriff Waverly's arrival incited. The ground beneath her seemed to shift, the weight of her decision morphing into a tangible force that grounded her amidst the escalating tension. "Thomas, Eli," Waverly called out, his voice steady, "you better mind your words. We're not here for trouble." He stepped forward, his broad shoulders casting a shadow over the narrow space between them. Martha recognized Waverly as the arbiter of rules, a bridge between the past and the future, a future she now prepared to seize. "Everything is fine, Sheriff," Thomas snapped, the irritation surfacing like a storm cloud. "It's just no," Martha interrupted, her voice carrying an unexpected firmness. "It's not fine. This is about more than what appears on the surface." She felt the flicker of astonishment from both men, but she pressed on. "I am choosing to invest in this land and help Eli grow," she declared, her words unlocking another layer of uncertainty within her, but this time, it transformed into clarity. She met Waverly's steady gaze. "If I don't stand by my choices now, I will forever live under the weight of what could have been. With the weight of truth echoing in her declaration, she could see the sheriff's expression shift. Confusion gave way to a glint of respect. You know the answer lies within every choice you make, don't you? What happens here could ripple far beyond this plot of land. What do you really want, Martha? The question settled between them like a stone dropped into still water, sending ripples of introspection through her. This was less about the property and more about her evolution, a reclamation of her own narrative from the clutches of stagnation. I want to forge a future that reflects who I am, not merely who I was married to, she replied, conviction filling her voice. I want to create, to build something better, to shed the shackles of fear. The revelation settled firmly in her mind. Her journey was not just about confronting Thomas, it was about dismantling the barriers within herself that had denied her a chance at real living. Waverly nodded slowly, as if he understood the gravity of her words. He turned to Eli, scrutinizing him carefully. And you, Eli? Are you ready for this responsibility? It won't be easy. I am more than ready. Eli's voice broke gently into the air, filled with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. This land will not just be an opportunity, it will represent our choices, our growth, and a path forward. A small smile crept onto Martha's face as she recognized the shared understanding blossoming between them, a connection forged in the crucible of adversity. Here lay the potential for transformation, not just of land but of their futures intertwined with resilience. Behind her, the weight of Thomas's disbelief remained heavy, but the defiance she felt grew proportionately as the sheriff pressed for clarity. You both know the risks involved. If the community learns of this undertaking and resists, then let them, Martha interjected fiercely, her heart racing with the thrill of defiance. I can't live in fear anymore. The time for hesitation is over. Every inch of earth that is tilled now represents a commitment to growth, and I want to pursue that in collaboration with Eli. Waverly regarded her solemnly, aware that Martha's willingness to embrace conflict could either save or shatter her standing within the community. It was a pivotal moment, a choice that could shift the balance of her life entirely. Then let us make it official, he said finally, breaking the tension with a decisive nod. But be cautious, some may not take kindly to this alliance. The implications hung in the air, and Martha felt the rush of possibilities extending before her like a wide-open field awaiting sowing. Courage fueled every part of her being, but it came with the awareness that not everyone would embrace her decision kindly. As Thomas fell silent, his expression unreadable, Martha turned to Eli, a shared determination glimmering in their eyes. Together, they might carve something beautiful from the remnants of their respective pasts. The journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, but with that challenge lay growth. But just as they began to take a step forward, a shattering sound echoed from behind them, followed by a loud shout. What is happening here? A voice filled with venom dripped into the charged atmosphere, and Martha's heart sank. Was it the community rising against her intentions even before they had begun? The confrontation lay ahead, a storm brewing, and Martha felt the walls close in once again as tension coiled tightly. Would her newfound resolve sustain the battles yet to come? What sacrifices would her commitment to growth demand? With that question circling her mind, she took a deep breath, preparing for the chaos that awaited. Martha turned slowly to face the source of the voice that now hung ominously in the air like smoke. It belonged to Bill, the one man who could seemingly summon the worst of the community's distrust with a mere utterance. His disdainful gaze sliced through her, as if he sought to invalidate everything she had just claimed. With a thudding heart, she forced herself to maintain eye contact. Every nerve ending tingled with anxiety, yet the ember of determination sparked fiercely within her. Fear had driven her decisions for far too long, and she could feel its grip weakening as she recalled her purpose. What are you doing here, Martha? Bill continued, advancing closer. You're making a mistake. And not just any mistake, a big one. You think you can just swoop in and save the day without consequences. I'm not here to save anything, Martha replied, the conviction in her voice surprising even herself. I'm here to build something new with Eli, to actually invest in our future, instead of just cowering in the shadows of the past. The words were bold, an impromptu mantra she had needed to voice. Bill sneered, his arms crossing defensively. Eli. A young man with no experience. His kind won't help you cultivate a productive future. His poison-laced words were tinged with an archaic belief that shattered the slight reprieve Martha had felt just moments before. Yet, as she looked from Bill to Eli, something fierce surged within her. He may not have experience, but he had something far greater potential, hope, and a will forged by hardship. Eli represents change. He embodies everything I want to move beyond, not just for me but for himself. Can't you see how important this is? The moment hung suspended, the weight of her voice filling the air around them, challenging the familiar boundaries. Bill, momentarily halted by her fire, shifted his stance, his posture a mix of disbelief and irritation. Sheriff Waverly watched silently, the tension crackling in the space between them, his presence a reminder of authority but not quite a refuge. Martha sensed this was the turning point, the moment where she either retreated into doubt or surged forward into transformation. With the sheriff beside her, Martha found an unexpected source of clarity. Each of Waverly's encounters with this community had shown him the layers beneath the surface. She decided to lean into that potential for understanding. Bill, she addressed steadily, her voice steadying the tempest, I know we don't see eye to eye. But if we can't adapt and embrace possibilities, we'll remain stuck. Adapt? Bill scoffed, the incredulity in his tone almost comical, save for the danger that lurked in his eyes. This community wouldn't stand for it. They would turn against you, and you know it. Do you really want to risk everything for some romantic idea of what this land could be? Martha felt another tremor of doubt. Did she truly understand what she was willing to risk? The possibility of losing everything still loomed. Yet, as she glanced at Eli, who stood resolutely beside her, she knew the answer was buried deeper than mere fear. It lay in the hope for something better. Yes, I do want to risk it, she replied, a firmer grip on her conviction solidifying. What we might create together is more important than the fear of what could be lost. It's about courage, growth, and championing a future worth fighting for. Her words were a deflection as much as a declaration, and behind them stood the longing she had buried for so long. Bill tightened his jaw, fists clenching at his sides. The fire in his eyes hinted at more than just disbelief, it was a threat cloaked in the guise of community loyalty. You'll regret this, Martha. And when you do, you'll find you have no one to blame but yourself. As he stepped back, the malodorous weight of animosity clashed with her burgeoning ambition, igniting a storm that resonated within the hearts of those watching. The air shimmered thickly with tension, a precipice on which she now stood. Martha looked around, her senses tingling, aware of the initial murmurs of dissent rippling through the small crowd gathering. They hadn't been the ones she feared would object. It was Jake, Thomas's brother, who emerged next, his face a mixture of curiosity and trepidation. Is it true, Martha? You're really going through with this? He asked, eyes darting between her and Eli. In that moment, she realized her path was about to diverge even further. It would demand more than resilience, it would demand allies willing to stand in the face of adversity. Would she gain the support she desperately needed, or would the same uncertainty that gripped her heart seep into the veins of the community, hindering her every move? The essence of her resolve hung, precariously poised, like a tightrope walking into the unknown. Would she be able to summon not just her own courage, but that of others too? A looming silence threatened to engulf her. Would this moment galvanize a movement, or would it hasten her undoing? With the stakes higher than ever, Martha took a deep breath. The battle of wills had only just begun, and the results would further define her journey. The question now, could she remain resolute in the face of increasing doubt, or would the ground beneath her feet crumble? Martha felt the weight of Jake's gaze, penetrating her carefully constructed resolve. Could this be the moment that tilted the scales in her favor? She took a step forward, the words stirring in her chest, desperate to escape. Yes, Jake. This is real. I believe in Eli and in what we can accomplish together. In front of the small gathering, their reactions flickered between skepticism and intrigue. Jake's eyebrows furrowed, revealing the conflict brewing within him. The tension felt almost palpable, as if the air vibrated with unspoken thoughts and contrasting opinions. Martha could almost hear the cogs turning in their minds. "What makes you think Eli can change anything?" Jake challenged, stepping closer. "We've tried before. People like him don't succeed here. Have you forgotten?" The accusation stung, forcing Martha to confront the shadows of her own memories. Faded faces of previous attempts and broken dreams flashed through her mind. But as quickly as the doubt surged, so too did her conviction. "And have you ever tried believing in someone?" She countered with an underlying intensity that caught even her off guard. "We can't keep repeating the same mistakes and expect a different outcome." Eli shifted beside her, a flicker of hope igniting in his eyes. She could sense him inching closer to the precipice of courage, mirroring her own determination. It was the first time she saw him not just as an ally, but as a partner in this fight. Bill stepped forward, anger crackling in the air like static electricity. His presence loomed large, it felt as though he fed off their uncertainty, reveling in it. "Do you really think this is going to end well? You're creating a rift, Martha, and once you cross it, there's no turning back." "Perhaps it's time to cross some rifts," Martha said, surprising herself. Each word bubbled to the surface, fueled by her waking desire to break free from the cycle of fear and doubt. "What if change is the very thing we need? What if I'm willing to risk the rift if it means stepping into a new existence?" An uncomfortable silence hung heavily in the air. Somewhere in the crowd, murmurs began, echoing fragments of her speech, her plea for support. This wasn't just about her anymore. She felt the growing weight of expectation on her shoulders, the responsibility to inspire. "Look around," she implored, gesturing toward the faces of the people present. "You all know what stagnation looks like, and it isn't pretty. We have to risk something to gain what we need. Can we unite behind the vision of a better future, or will we shackle ourselves to our fears forever?" Jake studied her intently, searching for cracks in her confidence. There was a shiver of hesitation in his demeanor, a flicker of consideration amidst his skepticism. Bill's scowl deepened as he sensed the shift, the lingering possibility that voices might rise in favor of Martha's vision. As seconds stretched into a heavy silence, Martha wrestled with her own internal fears. Did she have what it took to lead them through the storm? Would she falter when faced with more challenges? She could feel the pulse of her heart echoing her apprehension, yet the thought of backing down felt unbearable. The sheriff, quietly observing from the sidelines, cleared his throat, an indication that his presence could amplify the stakes of the moment. "This is a pivotal time for everyone here," Waverly declared. "But you have to understand, following her means walking a path yet to be paved." Eli reached for Martha's hand, seeking strength in her resolve, anchoring her amidst the swirling doubts. They needed clarity, but more than that, they needed a collective vision to emerge. Would others follow her into this uncharted territory? "Join me," Martha urged again, voice unwavering but heart racing. "Help us build that future." She closed her eyes for a fraction longer than necessary, allowing herself to dream of allies stepping forth, of walls crumbling under the weight of unity. The moment hung thick with unfulfilled potential and barely contained urgency, with renewed courage. She opened her eyes to meet Jake's stare. A vulnerable, yet fiery determination danced in his gaze, suggesting he might just be on the verge of change. The next move would define everything. And just then, a figure in the back of the crowd stirred a face she recognized, one that could shift allegiances in an instant. Her heart raced as Thomas stepped forward, eyes locked on her, his expression unreadable. He had the power to tip the balance. Would he stand with her, or would he join the ranks of those content to let fear dictate their choices? Martha's breath hitched. The moment of truth was drawing closer, and her fate hung in the balance. Would she find the allies she so desperately needed, or would she once again stand alone against an insurmountable tide? Martha felt the collective breath of the crowd as Thomas approached, his presence a harbinger of uncertainty and possibility. He had always been a figure of quiet strength, one whose opinions carried weight. Her heart raced not just with anxiety, but with the raw urgency of what was at stake. Thomas locked eyes with her, the silence thick with unspoken questions. She remembered the hours they spent together in the old community center, strategizing ways to lift others up. Every inch he stepped forward felt like a chance slipping into focus. Did he still carry the belief they once shared? "What's your plan here, Martha?" Thomas's voice reverberated through the charged atmosphere. He was not just an audience member, he demanded clarity, and perhaps even direction. She noted the intensity in his gaze, the way he awaited her answer with the sort of anticipation that could ignite change or fuel doubt among the others. She took a deep breath, forcing her racing thoughts into a single line of focus. This wasn't merely about convincing Thomas, this was about her ability to inspire genuine belief in their collective capacity to change. "We create a space for Eli to grow. He is not just a name or a stereotype, but a reflection of our potential. If we believe in him, maybe we can all break free from what confines us." Jake's skepticism returned to the forefront as he interrupted, "And if Eli fails like the others? What happens then? Another heartache, another excuse?" A ripple of murmur surged among the crowd. Doubt began to weave its way back into the fabric of the conversation, but Martha sensed that the tide was shifting. She had to challenge not only Jake's cynicism but the deeply ingrained fears shared by all. "Every attempt contains the possibility of failure, Jake," she said, her voice rising as she met his intensity head-on. "But to not try is to guarantee a stagnant future. I refuse to accept that fate. Are we really willing to let fear dictate our every decision?" As she spoke, her conviction began to crystallize before her, new and powerful. It dawned on her that her strength lay not in the flawless execution of plans but in the genuine belief that they could uplift one another. She could see them, not as hesitant followers, but as potential allies ready to embrace their fears and leap into the unknown with her. "Thomas," she called out, voice steady, "I need you to rally those who stand with me. You have always inspired others to see possibility where others saw doom. If you can help me reach them, we can genuinely break through this wall of hesitation." He hesitated, the corners of his mouth twitching as he weighed the risks against the rewards. But it was the flicker of hope in his eyes that ignited something inside Martha. If he agreed, they might find the courage to become a force that could not only change their current reality but forge an entirely new one. "I'll help you," Thomas finally said, determination etched into his features. "But know that not everyone will embrace this change. Some will always resist. It's the nature of fear. What can we do but show them a different way?" Martha replied, an unshakable resolve fueling her words. Gradually, several heads began to nod in agreement, drawn in by the contagious energy sparking between Martha and Thomas. She was reminded that every person who believed was a step toward a more profound shift. The momentum began to coalesce, transforming her fear into focused purpose. As Martha scanned the crowd, she noticed Jake's brow furrow deeper, frustration morphing into a begrudging respect. Waverly, too, appeared to reconsider his position, a flicker of understanding gleaming behind his analytical face. She took a step back, her heart pounding in both excitement and trepidation. The moment had turned, the stakes elevated, but with them came greater expectations. She felt the rising tide of responsibility, more potent and demanding. Did she possess the endurance to nurture this awakening, to hold everyone's fragile hope against the inevitable challenges ahead, before she could spiral into doubt? A distant shout echoed through the gathering. It came from outside, breaking the spell of the moment as nervous whispers ensued. Something was happening, something that threatened to interrupt their newly found momentum. Martha's pulse quickened. What now? She thought. Would this unforeseen event solidify their resolve, or would it drive them back into the clutches of fear? She moved toward the voice, a mixture of anxiety and determination propelling her forward. Change was upon them, but its shape remained unseen. Would they emerge unified, or would division fracture their fragile alliance? She felt it in her bones. An intersection of hope and apprehension was fast approaching. Martha squinted against the fading light, peering into the crowd gathered outside. An unfamiliar energy charged the air, tinged with both trepidation and curiosity. What could prompt such shouting? It bore the weight of urgency, eager for a decision, but laced with anxiety about what lay beneath the surface. As she stepped forward, the eyes of the crowd followed her, eager for direction. She was their anchor, and with each step, she felt the collective weight of their hopes and fears. The familiar ache of responsibility tugged at her, but as she moved, it transformed into a steely determination. The uncertainty surrounding her ignited her resolve. The spotlight was on her. Approaching the threshold of that noise, she caught the words that summoned her: speed, miracle, and slavery. A chill cascaded down her spine. It struck her that the stakes of the scenario unfolding beyond the crowd were far greater than any personal doubt she had grappled with mere moments ago. "Martha!" Waverley's voice broke through the tumult. "You need to see this. You won't believe what we've just been told." His urgent tone compelled her closer. Pushing through the throng, she broke free just in time to witness an elderly woman standing prominently with an air of fierce conviction. Her presence was captivating and peaceful, yet conflicted like a battle raging beneath the serene surface. At her feet knelt a solitary figure, cloaked in shadows, yet radiating an undeniable dignity that belied their circumstances. "I offer this land to you, my friend," the widow declared, her voice clear and unwavering. "In hopes that this can foster a future where fear cannot dictate who we are. Together, we shall show the world that nothing should bind us." The crowd went silent, palpable tension hanging in the air as they absorbed the weight of her words. Perhaps they were all too aware of the legacy which this offer embodied, an offering, not just of land, but of hope. Martha's mind spun, captivated by the layers of meaning playing out before her. In the softness of the widow's voice, Martha detected a metaphor for her own struggle. The impermanence of their fears and failures could be challenged through courageous choices. A spark ignited within her, illuminating pathways of individual growth. The widow's selflessness shattered her previous hesitations and arose as a poignant query: was she brave enough to seize this moment, to channel the widow's gift into something far deeper than any one-time act of unification? "Can we do it?" Martha breathed, almost to herself. "Can we turn this offer into something transformative?" Before she could answer, Jake's skepticism resurfaced. "And if it disappears like sand through our fingers?" he questioned, echoing the turmoil in the crowd. "What guarantee do we have? History has betrayed us before." Martha felt the rhythm of doubt return, a flood of internal voices urging caution. Yet, she remembered Thomas's earlier words: resistance was inherent in fear. "Jake, telling ourselves we can't change only cements our fear," she asserted. "This is our chance to step beyond those confines." Thomas, stepping toward her, added, "Martha's right. What if we turn that fear into our strongest motivator? This land, these connections can reshape who we are if we work together." At that moment, tangible energy flowed through the crowd. A few nodded in hesitant agreement. Hope interwove with fear, and this collective tension morphed into a tangled encouragement for action. While the widow stood grounded amidst a sea of unease, Martha felt an illuminating clarity emerge from within. This wasn't just about guiding the crowd, it was about calling forth her own unseen strengths. The widow's offer became the catalyst through which she must explore her capacity to lead amid uncertainty. As Martha stepped forward, ready to amplify her vision, she sensed a new challenge emerging. The emotions compressed underneath her resolve signaled that the realities around them would not be easily transformed. With the anticipation of the undetermined future pressing against her, she understood she would need to weather forthcoming storms of doubt and division. The echoes of that distant shout faded, yet reverberated in her thoughts. A battle was brewing. This tide of belief would require her to embody resilience against forces seeking to undermine it. "Martha!" someone called as she prepared to speak again. The moment hung heavy. Unseen masses watched, ready to either rise or fall at her words. She took a breath, the heart of the widow juxtaposed with her own beating ferociously in her chest. The time had come to face what could either shatter her ambitions or forge a new path. What are we willing to sacrifice for true liberation? She thought, and in that question lay the key to their destinies and the hidden power of transformation she had yet to fully harness. The murmur of the crowd and unsynchronized heartbeat surged around her. A spectrum of fear and hope intertwined, each pulse reminding her of the responsibility she bore. Could she really steer this multitude towards something greater than the sum of their individual doubts? Martha sensed a fissure forming beneath the surface, one side brimming with anticipation, the other, with skepticism. And there she stood positioned precariously in the middle. She had long observed the way fears could fester when left unattended. She couldn't let pessimism undermine the widow's courageous act. Raising her voice over the tumult, Martha clung to her growing resolve. What if we could change our narrative? Together, we have the power to redefine what this land means to us. We can create our sanctuary no longer dictated by what is, but by what we dare to envision. Her words hovered in the air, the audience's tension held like a taut string. She could see their reactions oscillating, some unwavering, clenching their fists, others shaken with doubt, whispering to one another. The shadows cast across their faces mirrored her own internal battle. Would she lead them toward action or be swept away by the tide of inertia? Each gaze pressed into her mind like an abstract question. Was she merely an echo of their desires? Or was this the nascent moment where her own voice could transcend her insecurities? Martha, Waverley whispered as he stepped close, urgency cloaked in a cloak of uncertainty. What if it doesn't work? What if we're foolish to believe in this? She turned towards him, seeing the flicker of doubt reflected in his eyes. And what if we don't try? What if we remain stagnant? The weight of those possibilities bore down on her like heavy chains. She couldn't allow fear of failure to anchor her in disbelief. The widowed woman's strength pulsated in her mind, the courage to relinquish something tangible for a vision beyond her own lifetime. In that moment, Martha was reacquainted with her own purpose. Not merely to lead, but to instill belief and resilience in others. Together, we will establish our place, she continued, her voice rising with newfound conviction. This land can be transformed if we commit to crafting it with intention and heart. No one should define our reality for us. Something shifted within the crowd, a shared heartbeat began to resonate. Martha could hear whispers turning to murmurs, hesitations shifting to curiosity. Perhaps this spark held the kindling needed to ignite a fire of transformation she couldn't yet wholly grasp. Jake raised a hand, the silhouette against the fading light sharpening his features. If we attempt this, there must be accountability, he said, yet his tone had softened, as if the seed of possibility had sprouted roots in his mind. We need to establish our vision clearly, even a plan. Martha nodded, heart racing at this challenge. Planning had often seemed like an abstract concept reserved for those more qualified, more experienced. But now, it felt necessary, like a compass her fledgling conviction needed to navigate uncharted waters. Then let us define our vision together. What do we want our sanctuary to reflect? She urged, emotions coalescing into a tangible charge. Each individual could stake their claim on hope. As fragments of ideas began to coalesce, each suggestion flowed with cautious optimism. What Martha had once regarded as insurmountable now demanded careful navigation. Propelled by the crowd's encouraged murmurs, she grasped the profound lesson taking root within her. Leading was not solely about possessing the vision, it was about synthesizing collective aspirations into actionable frameworks. Suddenly, a word rose above the rest: liberty, imbuing the air with renewed determination. Would they not only reshape the land but their own identities? As discussions ignited, Martha felt the pulse of uncertainty flutter beneath her fortified facade. Every word exchanged, every idea considered, brought her one step closer to personal transformation and ever-deepening understanding of the responsibilities that leadership entailed. Yet with each heartbeat, unease laced with ambition remained. The courage to lead in the face of doubt left her exposed and exhilarated. As each individual clicked into place, the fabric of their shared narrative began to unfurl, but the overarching question of sacrifice loomed still. Could she continue to rise, both as a beacon of hope and an architect of honesty? In this moment of evocation, clarity cut through the haze. It was also a preamble to the turbulence ahead. Challenges lay in wait, yet the time for decisive action was upon her. Each pledge and suggestion was a step towards their aim, but it would not come without its trials. As Martha braced herself for the journey ahead, another voice in the crowd echoed a fear of divergence. What if we cannot agree? The tension thickened. A realization struck deep within her. This was not merely an opportunity for transformation, it tested the heart of collaboration itself. The path forward required more than courage. It demanded resilience, unity, and the willingness to navigate conflicts. What awaited her was a deliberate trial of faith and unity, where the cost of failure might leave scars deeper than wounds. And so, as a new wave of uncertainty approached, the air buzzed with a mix of hope and impending strife. What elements of their past would they have to confront to truly embrace this profound gift? Courage would need to marry discernment as they faced both the promise and peril of their choices together. The looming question carved its way through her thoughts: could they withstand what lay ahead? Martha felt the weight of unresolved uncertainty settle heavily on her shoulders. Lively discussions surrounded her, yet each remark nudged her closer toward a tempest within a vortex torn between aspiration and doubt. What if Jake's fear wasn't merely a possibility but a reality waiting to unfold? The prospect of disunity loomed over them like dark clouds ready to burst. With every passing moment, the group became a reflection of her own complexities. She could sense the latent potential, but also the fragility of their intentions. Martha caught glimpses of faces she recognized, faces she had seen struggle and persevere. Their shared histories echoed in her mind, a collage of personal battles, dreams deferred, and fears simmering just beneath the surface. It was a network of hearts bound by experience, yet marred by unspoken resentment. What if our voices carry us apart instead of together? She pondered, her thoughts drifting to the past. She had always admired tenacity, but now she questioned if she embodied it enough to truly lead. These people could rise or fall as a result of her choices. Could she maintain her sense of self in the turmoil of disagreements? "Let us first address the elephant in the room," Martha said, her voice resolute despite the tremor in her gut. "We need clarity. What are the essential elements that unite us?" Silence settled in like a heavy fog. She had anticipated a chorus of ideas, a palette of perspectives to paint their vision brightly. Instead, she was met with the stillness of hesitation. The spark had flickered, now fighting against the breezes of doubt. The moment stretched, and anxiety coiled in her throat. Yet deep down, she felt a familiar stir of fire igniting at the possibility of confronting the challenge head-on. "Who among you feels strongly about what we can grow here?" she encouraged, desperately seeking a way to break the impasse. Slowly, a few hands emerged, accompanied by tentative voices that began to weave through the tense air. "We need a focus on education," one voice called out. "If we're to reshape our identity, we must empower ourselves and our children." The resonance of that statement struck Martha profoundly, sparking warmth where worry had thrived. "I agree," another voice chimed. "We also must secure our rights to this land, not just as a physical space, but as our haven." Each suggestion was a stitch in their shared fabric, individual threads weaving together into a tapestry of unity. Martha felt her heart quicken. A tangible shift was occurring. Their doubts mingled with dreams and, in doing so, began to lose their hold. But as voices grew louder with enthusiasm, the specter of disagreement hovered. What if someone challenged their vision outright? What if the unspoken tension erupted? "I cannot pretend I am not afraid," she admitted, her voice steady but vulnerable. "This endeavor is daunting, and I question if we can truly align our hearts." "Then, let us speak our fears," a calm voice countered, guiding the crowd to share not just their aspirations but their hesitations. "When we expose our vulnerabilities, we can find common ground." As voices began to rise in a chorus of honesty, Martha marveled at the intricacies of their shared humanity. Each person articulated their backgrounds, highlighting how personal struggles had shaped their desires. These were not just challenges to overcome, they were the very essence of their collective identity. Yet, with each narrative exchanged, an unsettling realization dawned on her. These shared vulnerabilities could forge bridges or expose faults. As the layers of doubt peeled away, would their newfound trust withstand the intensity that lay ahead? Martha was absorbed in the swell of dialogue when a chilling voice cut through the collective earnestness. But what if we want different things? A reluctant fear echoed through the crowd, igniting recognition of discontent within their unity. An instinctual dread flooded through her. Could she confront this possibility deftly, or would it unravel everything they had begun to build? The weight of the unknown pulled at her resolve, and she had the sinking suspicion that she stood on an unstable precipice. This was not merely an opportunity to alleviate fears, it would test her capacity to lead with empathy and discernment. As she gathered herself, a newfound fortitude surged within her, a burgeoning understanding that clarity would come from navigating their complexity. Martha steadied herself. If they could frame their disparities constructively, they might slay the dragon of discord. As she prepared to address their concerns head-on, a profound question loomed: were they ready to embrace their differences, or would they fracture like brittle glass under pressure? The air thickened with anticipation, and she faced the crowd with determination. This moment could define everything. Martha stood before the crowd, a sea of uncertainty mingling with a current of hope. The murmurs that had once stirred anxieties now echoed with the promise of possibility, a fragile thread woven by each individual voice. The overwhelming noise of skepticism teetered on the brink of silence, but now, it was time to forge a solid foundation for the future she envisioned. Yes, some of us may want different things, Martha addressed the chorus of uncertainty, but those differences do not define us. They can unite us if we dare to listen. Her voice rang clear, a blend of confidence and earnestness that invited dialogue rather than division. In that charged atmosphere, the crowd leaned in, hearts pounding. Their skepticism weighed visibly on their shoulders, yet beneath it lay a burgeoning curiosity and innate desire to transform fear into collective strength. This was the crux of her leadership, not to dictate but to engage, to render each voice invaluable in the tapestry they were weaving. Together, we can create a sanctuary that embraces diversity of thought and experience, she continued fervently, her eyes scanning familiar faces. We can be the architects of a new chapter, not just for ourselves, but for the generations to come. As these words hitched in the air, an undercurrent of affirmation began to pulse through the crowd. Encouraged, Martha pressed on. What if we established a community meeting, regular dialogue where we can express both aspirations and fears, she proposed. A place where everyone's views are valued, where we work through our differences and emerge stronger because of them. Slowly, hands began to rise, not just in support but in an eagerness to engage. The mingling of voices morphed into an electrifying chorus, brilliantly displaying the beauty of conflicting opinions finding harmony. They were no longer separate, they were a collective voice. "I'm in!" shouted one voice, emboldened by Martha's initiative. "Let us turn this fear into something constructive." Martha's heart swelled at the palpable sense of hope growing among those gathered. The belief that they could mold their destinies originated from vulnerability and authenticity. With each additional voice, the momentum snowballed, proposals and pledges flared up like a bonfire, illuminating the path she envisioned. They were not just confronting their past, they were reconstructing the narrative, a legacy rooted in resilience, collaboration, and aspiration. As she witnessed this unfolding transformation, Martha felt a radiant warmth enveloping her spirit. She was no longer just a widow teetering on the brink of failure, she was an integral part of the awakening, a catalyst igniting a shared commitment to cultivate possibility. Weeks passed, and the new community meeting took shape, blossoming into a sanctuary for dialogue, collaboration, and growth. Martha transformed, adopting the role of a leader advocating for education, rights, and dignity, not just for Eli but for everyone in their circle. With each session, stories were exchanged, dreams articulated, and tangible plans emerged. It wasn't without its challenges. Disagreements sometimes flared, the voices of dissent still echoed in the background. Yet through every confrontation, Martha leaned into the fear, remaining courageous as she bridged divides. They learned to listen, acknowledge differing perspectives, and celebrate the richness that diversity brought. Months of dedication brought measurable results. The once persistent debts transformed into opportunities for economic empowerment. They collaborated on community gardens, fostering food security while reinvigorating fallen fields. Their roots, fragile at first, matured into deep bonds of trust, resilience strengthening with each new endeavor. As the seasons changed, so did Martha's life. She found herself enveloped in significant recognition from the community, not just as a widow but as an essential figure leading the charge toward revitalization. Invitations flowed in from nearby towns, organizations eager to understand their model of collaborative growth, standing on the very land she once hesitated to share. Surrounded by thriving crops and laughter that filled the air, Martha reveled in a genuine sense of fulfillment. At last, she had turned her past's shadows into the sunlight of opportunity. Her journey was not just about overcoming grief, it was about realizing her strength and embracing the power of collective belief. Together, we have built a future free from the shackles of our fears, she reflected to Eli, who stood proudly beside her. It's time we inspire this change beyond our borders. They were prepared to lead, not just within their community but to become a beacon for others searching for transformation. With coherence and shared vision, they had risen. Together, they proved that personal growth could engender profound community transformation, a legacy not defined by history, but crafted through unity, perseverance, and the courage to envision a brighter tomorrow. This was the power of choice, the strength to cultivate a future they all dreamed of. Now is your moment to step into your own world of transformation. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, your support matters. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending below, we want to hear from you. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. Your engagement makes a difference in this journey of growth. Together, we can inspire change.